There are many different TV stand options on the market. Most will allow you to store electronic equipment like cable boxes and modems. If you choose to build your own, here are detailed plans for building a DIY TV stand that will accommodate most people's needs. Start by pre-cutting all the lumber needed for the project. We'll provide the exact dimensions as well as a tools and materials list at the end of the video. There will be quite a bit of lumber involved in this project, so it's helpful to sort the various pieces. Separate the longer rails, the shorter end rails, the legs, the shelves, door panels, and trim pieces. Begin with the 6 longer side rail pieces and mark each at 5 inches, 22.5, and 40 inches. Set a pocket hole jig and bit for 3/4 inch pocket holes and drill at each mark. When setting the depth collar on the bit, go by the shoulder of the bit, not the tip. The depth collar on the bit can be loosened and tightened using an Allen wrench. The shoulder is where the wider cutting edge of the drill bit begins. The jig, when clamped into place, serves as a guide for drilling holes at a precise angle. When 1-inch screws are driven into these 3/4 inch pocket holes, it will allow for 1/4 inch of the screw to penetrate the 1/2 inch wood used for the shelves. For the 4 end rails, mark and drill 3/4 inch pocket holes at 3.5 inches and again at 9 3/4. These pocket holes should be created on all the same side of the boards. 1-inch screws will be driven in to attach the rails to the shelves. Then drill 1.5 inch pocket holes into each end. 1 1/4 inch screws will be driven in to attach the rails to the thicker wood used for the legs. Moving on to the legs, measure and mark each of the 4 legs 12 inches down from the top end. These lines will serve as guides for the middle shelf when it's installed. Begin constructing the frames that will serve as the front and back of the TV stand. Each frame will consist of 3 rails and 2 legs. The pocket holes of the 2 upper rails should have the pocket holes point toward what will be the top of the TV stand. The bottom rail should be flipped so the pocket holes face what will be the bottom shelf. With the pocket hole jig and bit set for 1.5 inches, drill into the end of each of the 3 side rails. Apply wood glue to the inside edge of the legs for each rail and lay the rails between the 2 legs. Be sure to have the pocket holes on the rails facing what will be the inside of the TV stand. Drive 2.5 inch pocket screws into each rail and allow the glue to dry. Repeat the process with the second frame. Mark 1/2 inch inset lines along each leg. This will make positioning the end rails easier when they are installed. Attach the 3 support feet to the bottom shelf using wood glue and 1 1/4 inch wood screws. Be sure to drill pilot holes first so you don't split the wood. Use 3 screws to attach each of the feet, 1 in the center and 1 at each end. On the center foot, drive the end screw on the back side of the frame in about 2 inches from the edge. This will keep this screw from interfering with the screw that will be driven in later when attaching the bottom rail. Apply glue to one edge of the bottom shelf and place the front frame assembly onto the bottom shelf. Once all the edges are flush, clamp it in place. Use 1-inch wood screws to attach the frame to the bottom shelf and allow the glue to dry. Do the same for the second frame. Before installing the middle shelf, it will need to be notched to fit around the legs. Using a jigsaw, cut in 1 inch from the side and 1.5 in from the front at each corner. Set the shelf aside. Move on to the 4 shorter end rails. Apply glue to the ends of 2 of the end rails and position them at the 12-inch middle shelf guide marks. The top of the rail should be flush with the guide mark you created earlier and just behind the 1/2-inch inset marks. Hold them in position with loosely placed clamps and make any adjustments. Use a non-marking rubber mallet if necessary. Once they're properly aligned, drive 2.5-inch pocket screws into the pre-drilled pocket holes to secure them. It's easier to access the end rail pocket holes if they're facing the outside of the stand. These will be covered when the side panels are installed. Position the top end rails flush with the tops of the legs and the 1/2-inch inset guidelines. Clamp each top rail and secure them with the longer 1.25-inch screws. Now apply glue along the top edges of the middle shelf supports and drop the middle shelf into position. Clamp it tightly against the supports and drive 1-inch screws into the pocket holes on the front, back, and end rails. Secure the top shelf with 1-inch screws from below, then attach the side panels using glue and finishing nails. You can use a hammer, but using a nail gun will speed the job and better seat the nails below the wood surface. If you do use a hammer, set the nails afterward for a more finished look. With the basic stand completed, add decorative molding around the top and bottom of the TV stand. Make sure your bottom molding selection doesn't exceed 4 inches, or it will interfere with the operation of the doors. Make simple 45-degree miter cuts and attach the molding using glue and finishing nails. The molding joints don't need to fit perfectly. Any small gaps can be filled using wood putty. Note, if you're planning to stain the TV stand, don't use MDF molding, use wood. MDF is fine to use if you plan to paint, as we will here, but it won't hold stain. The last assembly step is to add trim to the 2 project panels that will serve as doors. Again, use a miter saw to cut 45-degree angles and attach the trim using glue and finishing nails. Check that the finishing nails won't poke through the doors. Attach the door hinges and secure the door to the TV stand with the hinge screws. Depending on the hinges you choose, slight adjustments may be needed to allow the door to close properly. Add any optional pull knobs or latching hardware to the doors if desired. Now fill any molding gaps and nail holes with wood putty. Sand the entire piece with 220 sandpaper. Remove any dust with a tack cloth and apply your choice of paint or stain. This stand will be sturdy and roomy enough to hold all of your electronic devices and add to your home's decor. Here are all the materials you'll need to build your DIY TV stand. Here is a cut list for the lumber needed to complete this project. And lastly, you'll need the following tools for the job. For more detailed information about this and many other projects, check out the DIY Projects and Ideas section of HomeDepot.com or talk to one of our store associates. To find out more about these plans for building a DIY TV stand, check out our guide on HomeDepot.com, or to browse our wide selection of materials featured in this video, click here.